I'm pleased to welcome you very warmly and to share a few opening remarks on this momentous occasion. This is groundbreaking as it is the first time a situation analysis is being launched in Guyana. Not that the picture that was taken of women and children in previous situation analyses was not perfect. But I guess this is just the season, the global season, the regional, the national, subnational season, when data has become our way of life, our call of the wild, the white fang, our Sandra Street and other stories, our To Kill a Mockingbird, our romantic novels, the rule by which we play. The Satan gives a very true picture of the situation of women and children in Guyana, and it calls attention of policymakers and other duty bearers to the need to build a strong connection between development programs and policies in order to construct a coherent set of support and services. This is needed in all spaces and across the life cycle of children, built on an integrated and multi-level support mechanism and evidence-based policies managed by skilled providers. It was Aristotle who once said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but an habit. The UNICEF Government of Guyana partnership is making excellence its habit, both by ensuring the availability of up-to-date disaggregated data, especially on the most disadvantaged, and by ensuring that that data is empirical and litmus tested. Our people, our men, our women, our children should never be destroyed in this season for the lack of knowledge and evidence. We are deemed not wise if we are found thirsty in the midst of water or wanting in the midst of data. With these words, I bid you a very kind word of welcome and ask that you sit back, relax, and enjoy the process as we make mention and highlight the successes of yet another piece of evidence for decision making. Thank you much. I'll invite Ms. Marian Flack, representative of Guyana and Suriname, to offer a few opening remarks, after which I'll give you a fair idea of what took place prior to our being here today and the journey to a final situation analysis on women and children in Guyana. Please make welcome Ms. Flack as she comes.
Today is bittersweet for me, as this is one of my last official functions before I conclude my tour of duty here in Guyana. However, I'm very pleased that we have been able to complete and today officially hand over this situation analysis of children and women. I take this opportunity to commend the Ministry of Social Protection for their excellent partnership throughout the CITAN process. This situation analysis, or CITAN, gives us a better understanding of the issues that children are facing in all 10 regions of Guyana right now, so that we can ensure that we plan and budget effectively to make their lives better. The analysis will be extremely important in informing the UNICEF country program for 2017 to 2021, which has 3 priority areas, and these are safety and justice, lifelong learning, and social inclusion and child rights monitoring. Over the next 5 years, UNICEF will continue its partnership with the Government of Guyana to support national strategic plans and programs with emphasis on equity and on reaching the most vulnerable children and their families. Based on data gathered during the most recent round of the mix in 2014, the CITAN highlights different groups of vulnerable children and women and has helped us to place emphasis on critical areas within our new country program. For instance, we will scale up our focus on child protection to ensure that violence, abuse and neglect of children is sufficiently addressed by promoting a multi-sectoral approach to violence prevention and strengthening child protection systems. Particular attention will be given to children with disabilities and children from indigenous groups. UNICEF will also support efforts to increase children's access to the justice system, in particular, developing and implementing targeted prevention programs for juveniles considered at risk of being in contact with the law. We also support the alignment of juvenile justice procedures with international standards. Education and early childhood development are also important areas of focus, particularly the provision of equitable and inclusive early childhood services for the most vulnerable girls and boys. We will also continue to advocate for positive discipline and inclusive education for all children and adolescents. Climate change is mainstreamed in our new country program, with emphasis on climate change education and addressing issues such as the availability of clean water, mitigating health risks, especially those posed by infectious vector-borne diseases such as dengue, and newer threats such as chikungunya and Zika, which has serious implications for pregnant women and their babies. Recently, the Minister of Social Protection suggested that we could include probably sustainable development and climate change into ECD, and we would like to explore this. In January of this year, we held an important stakeholder conference on child rights and business, which focused on the extractive sector. Based on the knowledge and insight gained through this meeting, we will look at creating partnerships with extractive businesses, as they are key stakeholders in addressing issues such as child protection and can also play an important role in addressing environmental issues such as mercury contamination, which affects children more severely than adults. An important part of achieving progress for children is the adequate allocation of resources across all sectors. Sufficient, equitable, and efficient investment in children is crucial for the full realization of children's civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Last week in Geneva, the Committee on the Rights of the Child launched General Comment number 19 on public budgeting for the realization of children's rights.
This is a mixed method piece of research. It has both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative gathered through desk reviews of a number of national and international reports, including the DHS and the Mix 2014 that was alluded to by Ms. Flack, and qualitative data that was gathered through focus group discussions, key informant interviews, and non-participant observations. So I consider this to be a rather strong piece and ask that you make good use of it. As we go along, I'll just highlight a few things that I think you should pay attention or could pay attention to initially, and then go deeper into the report. At this point, I'll call on our First Lady, Ms. Sandra Granger, to offer remarks. Please make her welcome as she comes, and I'll kindly ask you to stand.
First, I wish to thank Ms. Marianne Flack, representative of the United Nations Children Fund to Guyana and Suriname, for honoring me with an invitation to this gathering and inviting me to say a few words at the official handing over of the 2016 situation analysis on women and children. I believe Marianne is ending her tour with a bang here, because if this is the first situation analysis on women and children written for Guyana, I believe we are on the right path. Because I know her invitation to me stemmed from her knowledge of the importance which I myself attach to relevant, up-to-date, disaggregated data on issues affecting human lives, and in particular, those of our women and young people. because in this age of technology, Guyana cannot afford to lag behind not only in the compilation, but also in the dissemination of data. This situation analysis is a welcome resource since it will provide researchers, policymakers, and interested observers like myself with information on the status of women and children in Guyana. It will provide the information we need to assess the progress which has been made and to recognize the challenges we face. It will tell us how well we are doing and the areas in which such progress has been made. It will indicate also the areas in which we need to improve and hopefully guide our actions as we seek to address the burning issues that tear at the fabric of our society, such as domestic violence and violence against the person, unemployment, health, including sexual and reproductive health and HIV/AIDS, trafficking in persons, and suicide. I know I was asked to give very brief remarks, and I'm very happy that Minister Lawrence will be here to give you the meat of the discourse. But I wish to compliment UNICEF and the Ministry of Social Protection for the timely publication of this very useful report. Thank you.
I'd like to just underscore 2 points made by the First Lady, and the first is the importance of dissemination, not the importance of conducting the research and shelving the report and having it there, but the importance of getting it into the hands of decision makers at the national and subnational level. That is the first step. And secondly, the utilization of the information. That is why it was collected. That is what sparked the interest. That is why money was invested, efforts and time, and people were recruited, and technical and steering committees were established, because it is important that this information firstly get in the hands of individuals who are making decisions for children and for women in Guyana, and by extension other members of our population, but also to ensure that the data, when it gets into the hands of the right people, are utilized for decision making. Utilization is really the end-all objective of data collection and data gathering and synthesis. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, it's your privilege and mine to listen to an address by the Honorable Minister of Social Protection, Ms. Volda Lawrence. Please make welcome Ms. Lawrence as she comes.
It is with enthusiasm that I take this opportunity to present remarks at this forum for the launch of the situation analysis on women and children document undertaken cooperatively between the United Nations Children Fund and the government of Guyana. I am particularly heartened at the realization of this document, for it presents a comprehensive assessment of the struggles that our children and women face and sets the stage and the way forward for the development and implementation of strategic development plans and programs with a vision of advancing the rights of Guyanese children and women, particularly the most vulnerable and their families within the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals. The presentation of the sit-and document comes at a very opportune moment following the just concluded week of activities held in commemoration of Child Protection Week, where the incidence of atrocities against children was once again highlighted. And the Ministry of Social Protection's recently initiated multi-sectoral high-level policy dialogue, organized in collaboration with the United Nations Population Fund, in an effort to advance programming for adolescents and youth. This document, I esteem, will be critical for mapping the strategies for enhancing the well-being of our children and women as it focuses on the possible causes of the problems, along with an assessment of the data and the bottlenecks and barriers that have been surmounted. I wish to just briefly highlight a few of the important aspects of this work. As I alluded earlier, the Sit-and document portrays the Guyanese situation from the perspective of our children and women and adopts a life cycle and equity-based approach. Developing the analysis in 3 sections, namely the early childhood development category, comprising children from conception to 5 years of age, the childhood years from 6 to 11 years, and the adolescents, boys and girls, between 12 and 17 years of age, with emphasis on gender, ethnicity, geographical features, and household economic status. In each of the categories, the issues pertinent to that group are addressed. But as is characteristic of studies of this nature, there are problems that overlap and are interrelated. Most importantly, there is connectivity to the Sustainable Development Goals, which we know are the goals that need to be vigorously pursued to enable our country to achieve sustainable social and economic development. Since assuming office in May 2015, the APNU-AFC government has recognized the need for guaranteeing the rights of our children and women in terms of protection against abuse and violence in all its forms. At every turn on the television, on the radio, we are bombarded by reports of savage acts of violence meted out to our children and women. We can ill afford to allow this situation to continue unabated. For this constitutes an inestimable loss of our human resource and expertise, which are essential for our future development. Despite efforts and improvements in our socio-economic situation, yet these acts persist, and in an alarming manner in some of our communities. This is the reason for my eagerness in welcoming this Sit-and document. We can now act with more precision. We have an overall vivid picture of the situation as it is presented in each category. With this information and the demographics outlined therein, we have directives that can give us and guide us to those areas that need to be emphasized in order to make significant inroads. Throughout my discourse, I have been stressing the we, inferring that the information in this document must be shared, disseminated, and used by all stakeholders in collaboration with each sector to stamp out the ills that are rife in our society. Yes, I am advocating a multi-sectoral approach as the way forward. A discussion of each of the 17 sustainable goals to determine the way in which they will be realized vis-a-vis our children and women. You will notice in the document that several factors militate against our resolving the social woes that beset our children and women. The prime enemy is poverty, which is widespread in our rural communities, in our hinterland, the bottlenecks regarding legislation related to children, and the absence of relevant policies and programs, among others, to combat the battles that our vulnerable groups face. Hence, the initiation of our plan of action can be more focused now that we have at our disposal a comprehensive source of reference in the sit-and document. The Ministry of Social Protection has already earmarked the area of focus for 2017. It is our intention to intensify our efforts in tackling the issue of domestic violence, child abuse, teenage pregnancy, child labor, and juvenile rehabilitation. Admittedly, this appears as a looming, daunting task, but therein are issues that overlap as well as other sectors that are involved. What is comforting is that we have the information documented for us. All we need is to look at the indicators, examine the triggers and the findings, and together we can plan and strategize ways of protecting our human resource. We need to re-examine our family structure and values. We have to reinforce our training and knowledge base, our curriculum, and look at alternative ways of dealing with our children who are in conflict with the law. In essence, as the sit-and document underscores, we must take into account the social norms, the social and cultural practices, for therein are factors that influence violence against our children and women. I want, in closing, to express my heartfelt thanks to the United Nations Children Fund for the compilation of this comprehensive document. Mariam, you and your team have provided the government of Guyana and other attendant agencies involved in the welfare of children and women's issues with the relevant statistical data to embrace the prevailing social issues. And thanks may seem very small, but we do thank you. I want to assure you that this document will be circulated and used for the eliminating of violations against our children and women and to protect them. Our SDGs call for the empowerment and of our children and women, and we will invest our efforts and resources to engage in capacity building for the prevention of violence and support for our vulnerable children and women. We have begun to use this document. Our budget presentation to the Ministry of Finance is one which will give the ministry a lot of problems this time around, because we have taken the proof, and that proof lies within the sit-and report. Thank you so much.